Hey, welcome everyone to the Townsend's live stream here at the amazing Townsend Studios. I'm John, and we're going to be talking about fun 18th century stuff and what we do here on the channel and questions that you've got, as well as kind of follow up on episodes that we've done recently, specifically the oilcloth episode. And let's see. So I already said I was John. Behind, we're missing a few people. It's like, what is it? Like vacation week everywhere in the world. So a lot of people are gone here at Townsend's, but I've got Aaron here on the console, and he's making the live stream do what it's supposed to do and keeping all the equipment engaged. And Ryan is doing double duty here in the on the question box, and well, I don't think he's going to do very good stage managing today because
I'll take care of it.
He's going to take care of me. Okay, so there we go. That's that. I want to have a special thanks to we've got a bunch of like new Patreon people in this month, so I'll be reading off some names later on. So thank you guys, Patreon supporters. And I've been kind of in the chat or in the comment section recently. A lot of great comments. So you guys are doing a wonderful job out there in the comment section. Thank you for that. And we've been having, it's been a real busy, time here as we work on new products. I've been doing some strategy work and some ideas about what we're going to be doing on for videos in the future, as well as trying to figure out how to get the videos that we have in the can done. I mean, we got a lot of really great footage, and it's just finding the time to edit it all, put it all together, and get that stuff, out there. And we've got big projects kind of stacking up on us later this summer and in the fall. So, boy, Aaron's going to be busy.
Yep. I'll start sleeping here.
Yeah, we're just going to set up a cot so he can get his work done. So I am ready for. I think Ryan's got some questions that came up in the chat ahead of the stream. So what do you got over there, Ryan?
Oh man, just a second. Wasn't ready for that. Any future plans for on the road shows?
On the road shows. So I'll catch up on this. That brings up a topic just right off the bat, and that is today's Friday. We try to do our live streams on Friday whenever possible. I am probably going to be on the road next Friday like I was last Friday. So I had to kind of like stop along the side of the road, find a cool park, do the live stream. I may have to do that again, or I may not be able to. I'm not sure. I haven't like plotted out where I'm going to be 5 or 4 o'clock next Friday. So we'll see if we're going to be able to do a live stream or not. So on the road shows, what do they mean by that?
Being at sites, I think. Any plans for that?
I'm hoping. Well, I am going to be at a site next week. I'll just say it like that.
Woo.
So there you go.
We've got some other ideas.
Yeah, and we got some other stuff coming up, but that is kind of hard and fast. Next week I'm going to be out of town at a really cool site, so that'll be fun. Hopefully I'll come back with some really, really cool footage.
All right, here's another one. Any thoughts on using just regular drugstore boric acid as an adjunct to linseed oil?
Yeah, so I'll hold that one as I talk about the oilcloth when we get further on into the main topic.
Well, maybe you should just get in there some oilcloth, because a lot of people have oilcloth questions.
There we go. So let's talk a little bit about the oilcloth, and I did bring in the piece. So you saw me. I don't know how long ago was it that we made this.
That video was Monday, but we shot it. Was it like a week
2 weeks?
2 weeks ago?
Yeah, we shot it a week and a half earlier than when it came out. So
a lot of folks were scared that you were just going to hold up charred remains. They thought they might catch on fire.
No, it hasn't caught fire, and you can see that this one isn't. I don't think it's 3 weeks old yet. It dried out pretty rapidly. It's still got a pretty heavy scent to it, but oilcloth always kind of has a particular kind of scent to it. But really dried up really well. Even the spots where it was kind of right up against the wood looks. It's very nice and flexible. This piece came out really nicely. So you saw me we basically shot that like all in one piece. That video didn't take very long. I don't, how long did it take me to shoot it? I mean,
half hour.
Yeah, it was a really quick video. After I did the prep work for it, obviously. And I think I came back the next day, maybe 2 days later, and put one more coat on it. Probably the next day, really, because I could, after it dried out for one day, I could see it still had some holes. I needed to, come through and do a second coat on it. That's all I did on it, and it dried up really nice and quickly. Really, it does depend on the weather a lot. So we had some nice dry weather. And you can even see here at the edge where there's the part where there's just the fabric here, and the oil kind of came out all the way to the edge of the fabric, but the treatment, really the thickness of it, it's almost like twice as thick where the oxide coating is there. So this piece turned out really, really good. Super happy with it. And I did do a modification. Like everything I do, I never do it twice, the same thing twice. So this one actually does have some calcium carbonate, chalk, in the mix. It did not change the color at all, which was, I was worried that if I put too much in there, it would turn it pink instead of red. Didn't change the color. Hopefully that'll change the pH balance of it. There was a really interesting comment that somebody said that to get it to react and change the acidity, you need to boil it with that calcium carbonate in the mix as the adjunct, as somebody was saying there. I don't know. I don't know whether it really needs to do that or whether this will affect the pH enough that it won't eat up the fabric underneath. Only time is really going to tell on that. But so far, so good. Really, really happy with the way this small little test piece turned out in the video. I did some more, continued to do reading on the topic, and it's one of those things that once you start studying a particular topic, all of a sudden, even though you've never noticed it before, it starts popping up everywhere. It's like if you buy a new car, you've never really noticed that model before, and then like everyone on the road has that same thing, right? So I usually research topics are like that. For me, when I start studying a particular research topic, it starts popping up in all sorts of different places. So I've been noticing a lot of oilcloth references for pieces of clothing or different references. And then I was doing some more research today and noticed a very interesting one of the references that talked about oilcloth was somebody who was writing a whole treatise there in the mid 18th century about lead poisoning. And he was obviously was just like, boy, this lead is terrible. It's, it does bad things to you. And remember how I mentioned boiled linseed oil having lead in it as a drying compound? Well, this person was talking about how oilcloth was a problem. The people who make oilcloth would get lead poisoning because of the lead that was in it. And he was even referencing a particular person who was making oilcloth hoods. I don't know, like maybe as hat covers or something like that. And that this woman was getting lead poisoning symptoms, and he was trying to cure her of that. But, obviously she was fine until she sewed all these oilcloth hoods, and then she was sick. And he also talked to a particular person who I think was an artist painter. And he was talking about the creating of the paints, and he says, "Oh, I'm never around when they're doing that part of it because it always makes me sick." So, even today, as I was saying, we don't want to go back and make oilcloth exactly the same way they did because it was poisonous. Yeah, they had problems with it in the time period.
And you have that other piece up here too.
Yeah, the piece that went bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here's the example piece that was several years old that had well, I don't know exactly why, but you can see that it is very, very easy to kind of disintegrating. And at first I thought it was just because it had been out in the weather and that it had been attacked by the weather. And now I realize that obviously it was the compound itself that cause it to deteriorate like that. Ran into some other references, other words that if you're doing research, look for oil case, which I hadn't ran into before, which is another sort of a term for something similar or the same thing as oilcloth. Another one was a really interesting Cera cloth. So CERE cloth. And it reminds me of saran wrap, right? So Cera cloth means an oil or a waxed cloth or possibly an oilcloth, but wax was the main thing. But it was also a waterproof kind of cloth, and they would use it. Most of the references, or a lot of the references you see, were used. It was a linen cloth that was wax coated and used to cover dead people, and like a winding cloth or something. So. And I thought that was weird, saran wrap, wrapping up things, and I don't know, it's really weird.
That's crazy.
So somebody was asking, they said they noticed, let me see here, they noticed that an edge of the new oilcloth was unfinished. Was that the norm, or was it just a shortcut for the video?
Well, since you have to put the cloth onto a frame and stretch it out tight, it kind of makes it so that the very edges of the cloth are always going to be imperfectly coated, depending on what kind of frame you build. And so in my circumstance, it wasn't as easy to paint. If the fabric has to go past the edge of the frame, past where it's fastened, so it's not tight there and it's not easy to put the paint on it. So generally, you would probably cut those edges off anyway.
And somebody else said they have a tin cloth raincoat, and they're wondering if it's similar to that.
Yeah, there was a good reference or somebody had some tin cloth comments in the video itself, and they were, I think they were mentioning it as a mix of oil and wax, and the reason why it was called tin cloth is because it gets very, very stiff when it's cold. I had not heard of tin cloth before, so very, very interesting. And that wasn't one of the terms I had a chance to do any good research on to see how old that was. Sometimes something as simple as the OED dictionary gets to be really, really helpful when you're looking for some of these words and how far back they go, whether they're a 19th century kind of invention or word, or they come in much earlier than that.
And somebody else is asking if we have any oilcloth, cloaks, clothing, haversacks, etc. for sale.
No, that oilcloth, I haven't found a kind of an oilcloth that I thought was particularly period-like that is available as a commercial product today. So it would have to be something that was done, very, very custom and one at a time. And that makes it, doing that makes it very, very difficult to offer it as a kind of a commercial product. So I would suggest that would be something that people would do individually to their garments.
I want to read a donation real quick.
Oh, great.
$50 from Julie Stevens.
Thank you, Julie.
Thanks, Julie.
I'm pretty sure she's donated.
Did she have a particular... I think that was the one that came in late 3 or 4 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. Did she have a particular comment?
Nope. Just
okay.
Thank you for all
Thank you so
do.
much, Julie.
Yeah. We really appreciate everyone's donations, and we really appreciate that.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah. We do another question.
Okay, so I've got some questions that are getting away from oilcloth a little bit.
That's fine.
One
we can come back to it.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are saying that they'd like to see more or learn more about handmade tools in the frontier.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a whole lot of experience with sharpening steel, specifically scythes?
Oh, not size specifically at all. I haven't really worked with those to any great extent, and that is a specialty thing. Kind of learning that particular sharpening skill, and sharpening always seems to be one of those. It seems so simple, It's like you sharpen this thing, you use a stone, you're looking at this kind of angle, and it should be simple, and it just never quite is. You're
the
always
worst at sharpening. I'm so bad at it.
Right. You got to fight that little edge of metal that comes out over the top and makes something that seems like should be really sharp, isn't sharp. you know, knowing how hard a particular piece of metal is, and you know, getting the different kinds of sharpening to work for you. The more I do it, the better I am at it. But there always seems to be sometimes when you think this was going to be easy, this was going to sharpen right up, and then you're fighting that thing for the next hour, wondering why this particular piece isn't sharpening up like it ought to. Sometimes it's not easy as you think it's supposed to be. Now, sides should be, they were really tricky.
That would be tough.
Yeah. So, did they use tar for waterproofing on the Frontier as they did for sailors' ships and hats?
I think it really has to do with the kind of availability of that item as to whether it's going to show up in that kind of Frontier setting. If you're not in a part of the Frontier where that kind, you know, either you bring that item with you, right, or you have to have that item available to you where you're at. Now, oilcloth, same kind of issue. Are you going to have a boiled linseed oil where you're at? So an oilcloth item is going to have to come with you from wherever you were at. You can't make it in the Frontier situation. You might have more luck with, say, using linseed or using like beeswax on something. Then you could more easily do that. And you can't stop laughing.
I'm laughing at Muggles are cool too. It said they'd be back in 5 minutes, not to say anything interesting. For
okay. I'll only do boring stuff. So tar is the same kind of issue, and there's different kinds of tars that are available. Some are really, really stiff, and you have to heat it up really hot to get it to go onto your cloth, and that might not work very well for you. And other kinds of pine tar that are available to you are very, very runny. So some things, you might be able to actually create tar. Like, you've heard of the Tar Heels, right? You're in North Carolina, you've got all these trees, you dig a great big sand pit, you burn all these trees, and the resins and tars go down into the bottom, and you've got this patch of tar that you would work with, and sometimes it might be very liquid resinous. That's something you could do in a Frontier situation and make a waterproof cloth. So yeah, I think it's a good extrapolation.
So it's a question I think is going to be difficult. Did Mennonites wear the same type of clothing as other people around them in the 18th century, or did they dress differently?
They wore the same. I think that we're going to stick with a kind of a they may have worn a bit of a uniform, more uniform than typical people in the 18th century, but it wasn't going to be so strange that people, I think, would pick them out. I just spent a whole bunch of time reading Heckewelder's journal, and wow, I'm going to have to do a couple of episodes on that. There's the life of Heckewelder book, that Dover edition, just tight packed with great information, both of what's going on with Mennonites, Moravians, Brethren in the time period. And another great site, if you want to get into that, is the Winston-Salem site there, Old Salem. That's based on that Moravian kind of colony there. They certainly had a different idea and sort of religious community that was going on that we don't kind of understand right today. A lot closer to, say, the Hutterites that are still going on today. Definitely a community aspect that's going on, and they lose that, the Moravians do, and that changes in the 19th century. Mennonites may be kind of similar to that. But while they had more of a community aspect, I didn't get a feel that their clothing was all that much different than the standard people around them. But the Heckewelder Journal, excellent for understanding what was going on with the Moravians, what they thought about missions, and specifically what was going on with their work with the Native Americans. And so you get a really good glimpse about Native American culture in the time period, as well as how the Moravians were interacting with them.
So how about the difference between Mennonites and Quakers?
No, I can't.
I figured, but I thought I'd ask because you surprised me on the last one. Now, a lot of folks are joking about where you keep your nutmeg stash and if you have a bunker or something like that, which is funny. But there's a question about were there any medicinal uses for nutmeg?
That's a super good question, and I'd have to dig into the books for a few minutes on that one. I bet you they talked about it a little bit. They have there's a lot of things show up medicinally that you wouldn't expect.
Somebody asked specifically about VD, so I don't know if they had if they read something specific to that
on
or not.
Nutmeg? No,
yeah.
Mercury was the classic on that.
Okay.
I mean, they used all kinds of mercurials for that. And boy, talk about horrible poison.
Yeah, that's been they went to Mercury in the thread too.
Right.
It's and how about some more videos or a video on doctors in the time period or pharmacists?
Yeah, I've had a couple of people that well, there's the great.
We tried.
What was his name?
I'm sorry, I don't remember. The nicest guy I've ever met.
At Fort Loudon down there in Tennessee.
Yeah. We had some problem with
he was fantastic.
Yeah, he did.
You couldn't ask for a better demonstrator.
Yeah, excellent job of doing sort of a surgeon's mate there. His name will pop in my head as soon as the camera turns off, right? We shot a bunch of video with him, and we may put together some little clips of it, but it didn't fall together as a whole episode like I really needed it to do. And we talked to some other people about doing medicinal ones. There is the one interview we did at Mississinawa with the fellow down there.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. But he's talk about a character.
Yeah.
And I think
crazy stories.
That video with Maggie and the body snatchers kind of went into some of that a little bit.
Yeah, there is the medicinal topics just keep going on and on. We could do nothing but a channel on 18th century medicines, and it would be creepy, scary, informative. Some things are amazing that we, for 100 years thought it was ridiculous, and now, of course, it's like, wait, that's actually really, really important, really good. And then other things, they were just killing people left and right with crazy stuff, acne, and clear that up with mercury or something.
The last place he wanted to go was the doctor. Like, no, not the doctor.
So doctors were one of those real hit and miss things in the 18th century, certainly.
So somebody's asking about rules for hospitality and how that worked. And that
rules or roles?
Rules with a U. Probably depended on who you were.
I think it really, really depended on your region and the culture that you were within, because you'll find within the journals talking about how different areas were very, very hospitable, and then you would go someplace else and you felt very alienated. So I think it really depends on where you're at as to what those kind of standard felt rules were in that. Obviously, there weren't any set down rules, but just like I was mentioning the Heckewelder Journal, and it turns out that the Native Americans were generally very, very hospitable, and that was part of their culture for the most part. Obviously, depending on where you're at and which kind of, what kind of. There are different kinds of Native American cultures and tribe cultures, but most of them were very, very hospitable if you were in peacetime, and that was really good to travel in those areas. And then, of course, not so much in a situation where there was warfare. And the same thing is happening all up and down the East Coast with the different kinds of pockets of culture. Some places were very hospitable, and others not so much.
I'm going to put a link to that surgeon video.
Yeah, did you find it?
Yeah, just went in the chat. I forgot. That guy was funny.
So I just want to say you guys are like killing it in the chat answering each other's questions today. Thank you so much for chiming in with those great answers. Somebody is asking about sailors at port, what they wore and what preparations they need to do to sail, what they did with their downtime.
Like while they're in port for that stuff. Generally, a sailor in port, it is the classic that when a sailor is in port, he's not preparing. He's losing. He's getting rid of all his money as fast as he possibly can, and generally has fancy clothes. It's a typical cartoon kind of joke. In the 18th century, that the sailor would come in and he would get rid of, or he would take off all his working clothes, and he would have a special shore-going rig, fancy clothes. He's got on silver buckles, and he's got a fancy hat and as many shiny buttons as he possibly can on his jacket, and he's going to the bars, he's drinking all his money away, he's, visiting women of ill repute. He's, there's no preparation there at all. And there was Henry Fielding in his trip to Lisbon, he's talking about how even a merchantman, he didn't want to send his boat onto shore with any of his crew because they would abandon it right away. It's like, well, while I'm on board ship, the captain, he's the ruler, right? I have to do everything he says. But as soon as my foot hits the shore, woo, I'm out of there. I'm doing whatever I want to do. If he's calling me back to duty, well, maybe that's not so important because I'm on land and the long arm of the law can't reach me, right? So a sailor in port is a dangerous thing. And so they tried not to let them go whenever possible because they would just go crazy.
All right, John, if you could have one 18th century profession, what would it be and why?
Wow.
Tricky.
Wow.
It's going down in history, so make it a good one.
That's a painful choice for me to make. Just one thing.
So for the folks that don't know at home, John does everything at Townsend's. He doesn't ever just do one thing. Anything he can get his hands on, he's going to work on.
Yeah, what was I today? I've had my hands, in computers and electronics, and I probably was working on a couple of new products and then I was researching and building some things here today. Probably it's like it's everything and all the time. I would say if I wasn't a seasick person, which I am, then I think doing merchant shipping would be really good. Cool.
That's a good answer. Yeah. All right,
we got like sailing whenever possible.
We've got an Instagram contest. You want to talk a little about that?
So every week, we couldn't do it last week, but every week when it's possible, we go through the Instagram stream looking at the hashtag Townsends for really cool images that have to do with whatever we do here, historical things, if it has to do with a cooking episode, if it's just a historical site, anything like that. We go through the stream, we pick out what we think is the winner for that week, and then we send them a gift certificate. And so this week we've got a picture of...
Christopher Oliva did the cat litter oven.
He did yes, and he said, what was his little comment?
He was hoping that his bread would not taste like cat litter.
I don't think it did.
I hope that he used fresh, brand new cat litter.
You have to use fresh cat litter.
I changed the box. I just used that.
Well, we were talking about using animal feces for different things in the 18th century just the other day. Yeah. Dog feces, which we generally try to get rid of today, was a sought-after thing in the 18th century to use for tanning hides.
Yeah, well, that was actually a conversation I had with Carol Jarbeau.
Okay.
And she was talking about how there were people that knew the look and feel of the very most sought-after feces and would collect this think of somebody that collects glass bottles and turns them in. Yeah. So that was their profession.
Yeah, well, and she was talking about, she does a laundress interpretation, and they would collect urine in the time period to use for, you would let that age and it turns into ammonia, which they would use for bleaching cloth, and you would use that for both a cleaning thing and also when you're preparing cloth, or I was reading about it in wool preparation. So you get the wool off the sheep, and then it has to be washed before you even start to spin it up into things. You would put that in a bath of aged urine, and then you would wash that like in running water in a stream to wash all that away, and that would bleach it and clean it and all that. Yeah,
this is the best live stream ever.
So I don't have any more feces to talk about, but speaking of, no, never mind. Seriously though, you said something about we got to go through some housekeeping. You said you wanted to talk about new Patreon supporters.
Yeah. So Patreon. So Patreon is one of those ways that people help support what we do on the channel. We're always doing crazy stuff, and people want us to do more fun and crazy stuff. And one of the best ways to do that is to support us monetarily. And Patreon is one of those ways that people help us make more videos, and it's like a small amount monthly that people give to us, what do you pledge to it, and then Patreon just takes out a little bit. Anyway, the new people, new Patreon supporters in the last week or 10 days or so: Ken Teagan, Linda Edwards, Daniel Marinato, Mary Hotstetler, Emmanuel Charlotte, something like that. Matthew Scher, Susan Garbowitz, Ron Johnson, Milo Menlo, and somebody called Mr. E. Meat, or Mystery Meat, as you run it together. So a lot of great new Patreon supporters, and really, gosh, that makes it so much easier for us to plan out what we're going to do. We know that there's a certain amount of money to help us plan going to events, or different kinds of pieces of equipment that we need to get in the future. So thank you guys so much, Patreon supporters.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. All right, I'm going to blast through some. Can we do a series on homesteading? That's a question.
Okay, so what part of homesteading are you interested in, right? So right now we're still in the American Frontier series, but that Frontier series is kind of, at least right now, a bit more strictly, you're walking out in the frontier, you're going to need this or that, right? We're going to be working on some log structures, maybe a cabin. We're going to be working on a dugout canoe probably. But what kind of things in homesteading are you interested in?
Yeah, I think it gets difficult. A lot of people want to see things with traveling with animals, pack animals and stuff, and it's just that's not super feasible for us, really. We have to find people that have those animals, I guess, and then maybe we could, but it gets difficult to get into that kind of thing.
Although maybe with that, we got a trekking thing that's probably coming up, and I think Keith has pack animals, doesn't he?
We're going to keep our fingers crossed on that.
We're going to hope for that.
And change the subject quickly because we don't know. Are you attending the Redcoats versus Rebels event at Old Sturbridge Village this weekend?
No, unfortunately not.
That sounds cool, though.
Yes, sounds great.
How old are you guys?
Old. I'm something in the 50-ish idea, somewhere in there. I never keep track. I always have to do the math, so somewhere in there.
After 21, you just kind of...
What's the point?
Count.
Aaron's probably somewhere in the late 20s. Ryan's in the early 30s, right?
Actually, I turned 32 this last week, and I know that just because it just happened. And my wife told me, you're not 31, you're 32. So there we go. Have you ever been to Old Salem in North Carolina?
Yes, it's been a while, but I love that site. A lot of great, very, very interesting buildings, some wonderful museum kind of situations there, and great staff. They're always doing fun stuff. Like we even did that cookbook with the German recipes that they were working on. So, yeah.
Every time we bump into folks from there at Alphium or something, they're always super kind and helpful.
Yeah. Super kind.
Did early Native... I know you've talked about this before, but did early Native Americans, or pioneers use acorn flour? Do you have any recipes?
Okay, so this is... okay. I got to back up, go forward, that kind of stuff. Acorn flour. Yes, very, very used in Native American settings. I haven't seen any references it being used by Europeans or other kind of colonist-y kind of people in the 18th century. It may be there, just not something that's popped into my research, because there's always more to find. Boy, you can say, oh, they never did this or they always did this, and you will always be wrong. So I haven't seen that being used by other people other than Native Americans in the setting. Hopefully, there's a great kind of chapter in the Heckewelder book, not a long chapter, but a great chapter where he talks about Native American foods. We're going to be doing a whole series of food episodes coming up that are non-English foods. So we'll be doing some Spanish, some French, some more German, Swedish, and Native American foods. And you can see how they all sort of influence what's going on in Native American cooking, North American cooking. So
somebody is asking for the title of that book.
The Heckewelder book? I think it's...
Do we have it on our website?
No, it's...
Oh, okay.
I'll have to build an Amazon link for it. Life of John Heckewelder, I think.
All right. Somebody's asking about how close are modern heritage tomatoes to tomatoes that were available during the colonial era. You could probably talk about that just as vegetables in general.
Yeah. It's hard to know exactly what these things were like 200 or 300 years ago. And we can only guess, even though the varieties that we may have today, it's like, oh, this is a heritage variety. They had the same one 200, 300 years ago. All these things are constantly changing a little bit and changing a lot, maybe, as some of these heritage breeds, even in the last 100 years or so. So you'd have to go kind of picking and choosing to find ones that were like, colonial breeds, and those can be, our clues we only have clues as to how true these heritage breeds are to what they were 200 and 300 years ago. Hopefully they're very, very similar. Now, tomatoes in the 18th century, well, you don't see very many of them showing up in English cookery, basically none. There is some in the Harriet Pickney Horry manuscript cookbook. There is a reference to tomatoes in the 18th century in North American cooking. And, of course, we'll be doing some Spanish cooking up here in a very, very short order. And tomatoes certainly show up in Spanish cooking in the 18th century. What were their tomatoes exactly like? Which varieties? I wish I knew.
Will there be more videos in the future about 18th century gardens?
I'll try to make sure to get some in. That's a really good topic for the place I'm going next week.
Yeah, it is. Okay. How about sourdough bread? Was it a common thing back then, or had yeast been cultivated far enough to be common in the 18th century?
Great topic. I could probably spend a couple hours. Well, I could probably spend a couple months researching it and then a couple hours talking about it.
We do have a lot of videos that cover it.
Yeah, there are some where we talk about that. And, of course, I was probably a little more firm about my answer than I am now. I think sourdough is tricky. So references to sourdough kinds of breads in English cookery in the 18th century, you don't see it, at least much at all. There are a few references to hints to sourdough cookery going on in North America, but I think those are leads back into like German culture and some of those other cultures where continental Europe cultures where sourdough was more, used. Now, sourdough can mean a couple different things. I could answer this. I could spend a week talking about.
What do you have a good source material for people to look into it?
Yeah, all
wonderful. Let's move on. John's being real helpful today, isn't he, guys?
There's a lot there, and you gotta tie all these things together, and it's really not easy to get a quick answer to that because there are some hints at it, but how far back it really goes and how pervasive it was, that's harder to answer.
Let's talk about spicy dishes. Are we going to see any spicy dishes coming out of this new series that we're talking about here?
It's definitely spicier. What do you think, Aaron? What do you think about Mondays? We just shot a couple of episodes yesterday. They were
yeah.
Were they spicier? They were different.
They were definitely different.
John thinks everything that's like not cream is spicy.
I don't think either of these.
They didn't have any peppers or anything in them.
Some of the ingredients used were very, very unique and very, very surprising. Particularly the second one we did, but you'll see.
Somebody said, "What the heck happened to John's hat?"
This hat is the one that's been in the rain a lot, so it's really nice and soft, and it's like, oh, this is the hat I want to wear, even though it looks horrible. Feels nice.
Well, paintings, you never see a pretty tricorn. You sure don't. Will there be an episode or series on 18th century technology?
We're always dealing with 18th century technology, aren't we? I mean, when I get a question like that, I say, well, which one?
Okay. Well, here's another question that might help out. Somebody asked how much your engineering background comes into play with reenacting.
All the time. I mean, I'm always, one of my favorite books is to go into Diderot's encyclopedia and look at the plates and see how they were doing all the technology of the manufacturing of everything they had in the 18th century, and how much was it a craftsman making one thing, and how perfect was it versus, was it slapdash, was it rude and, rude and crude manufactory versus, finely made stuff. And, I'm always coming to the conclusion that it was both. And, all those things at once. You had this amazingly precise manufacturing going on, as well as rude, crude, fast, get it done. Those things don't last. So we don't have as many examples of those. We tend to stereotype history, and we look back and it's like, well, everybody was wearing brown stuff and it was stitched together out of animal hides or something, and it's like, well, there may have been a few people like that, but the vast majority of people, their life wasn't like that at all. 18th century technology. See, you get me off on a rabbit trail. What can I say? There is some really, really good stuff. Dig up the Diderot's plates. You can see steam engines from the 18th century. You can see all these amazing things that they were doing and how they did them. And, sometimes they're glorified or simplified. They made it look too clean and pretty at times in those plates because they were trying to show the process and not necessarily the true reality of the manufacturing of certain things. But I'm always amazed by the far ends of what they were doing, how crude or how simple some things were and how complicated and wonderful other things were.
Do we have any plans to do any more period blacksmithing videos? Yes. In fact, there's one in the there's a couple in the hopper right now. So you just have to yell at Aaron in the thing, say, "Edit faster, Aaron! Edit faster!"
Yeah, do super chat and I'll edit faster.
It's
I'm the bottleneck.
Yeah,
we can have as many ideas for videos as we can pile up, but they all come down to how fast can Aaron cut them.
Yeah, I can probably shoot a really cool video a day all by myself, but he's got to edit them.
Yep.
John, would you be into the idea of making a suggested reading list for these folks, and we could post that somewhere?
I've done some of that. But it's a suggesting reading list from here to the moon, and depending on the topic, there is a page on the regular Townsends.us website that is
I'll go find that.
A book recommendation thing. Although I haven't, looked at it in the past 6 months, so there's so much good stuff.
Man, folks are hungry for different types of videos. Can you do more videos about people who chronicled their adventures?
Yeah. We've got some more journally books coming up, and there's just some really good stuff out there. The Traboo book that I've got recently, Simcoe's journal. There's a bunch of.
And how about interview videos? People would like to see those.
Me too. I've got the blacksmith one, Jamie Tyrese, is in the hopper, needing edited, and I'd love to do some more of those. Those are always fun.
We got $50 from James. He says, "Fix yourself, Aaron."
Yeah, thank you, James.
For you,
Aaron,
I'll do it.
Aaron's catching all kinds of heck in here.
That'll put a fire under him.
Well, then Rose said, "Never rush an artist." I like that one too.
Well, there is something to that.
And his head won't fit through the door now.
Yep.
Somebody's asking Kyle, who isn't here. Kyle X, it's Ryan today. Get that straight, please. I'm joking. No, I don't think John has anything brewing right now. Do you? Are you brewing anything?
Brewing anything? Yeah. I'm supposed to be brewing up something.
But are you?
Well, I have a couple of episodes that I really need to. Well, brewing is tricky, right? When you're busy, you've got this thing you need to get started. Then you have to. Brewing is one of those. You got to come back and check on it and make it do its thing. So no, I don't have anything brewing right this second. But I've got some green beer kind of things I need to be working on for this 2 episodes. I got way too many episodes to do.
We'll say that
piled up.
We've been talking to sites and friends, and we've got all of these videos. We've got ideas for everything that you guys have asked about. We're just trying to get it all done and edited up.
Yeah.
Hey, $10 from Maxer. Cool.
There he is.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Max.
Did you see him call you out specifically earlier, Aaron?
Me?
Yeah. I'm trying to remember what he said. It was a nice thing.
Copy and paste it if you did. And then 2 pounds from Teresa.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you.
That's pound, right? Yeah. I get the euro and the pound.
Someday he's going to learn all those little symbols.
These new episodes will make me more cultured.
Well, here's one. Have you ever thought about going to South Haven, Michigan, to the Friends Goodwill at the Maritime Museum?
I've been there.
To do a segment.
Yes, I have. I've even talked about them, but it's been several years ago. I would love to do that. So, hey guys, at Friends Goodwill, just get in touch.
Well,
if everybody in the chat right now could message Friends Goodwill and say, "Hey, why haven't you had Townsend's yet?" that would be. Can you make a list of the events that you'll be attending so we can say hi to you fellas?
We only events wise. I don't know.
We normally know about 3 days before we go.
Yeah. So we kind of we've been.
Well, what are the for sure ones?
Well,
as of right now,
I don't know though.
Oh.
Even we usually go to Feast of the Hunter's Moon, Lafayette, Indiana, in October or late September, wherever it is.
They're both the beginning of October this year.
Yeah, Mississinawa 1812, Marion, Indiana. Those are classics that we go to every year and have gone to for like a million years. But the problem is other things are happening, and I don't know if something's going to pop in. And it's like, no, we have to go someplace else that weekend. So hopefully we'll be there, but it is really hard to kind of say we're definitely going to be XYZ because so many things are happening right now.
Oh, guys, what I said about messaging Friends Goodwill, that was a joke. Don't really do it.
Please don't do
that. That was for real a joke. Sorry. Who is your favorite wrestler, John? Is it The Undertaker? They're very hopeful that it's The Undertaker.
It's all right, it was giving me the Yes.
Don't you like that Undertaker signature move, John? What was it called again?
The pile driver? No.
Hey, I'm going to read a donation.
Oh, jeez.
I believe this is Muggles are cool too. I think Dave commented before. I think it's
they're
Swedish.
the ones that said that they're the ones that said that they were going to leave for 5 minutes, not to say anything.
Oh, right. 20 Swedish krones, I believe.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And then $2 from Kevin Smith.
Thank you, Kevin.
I'm poor, but still support the channel. Aaron, please.
we
thank you.
We thank you for anything you can do.
2,000 yen, I believe, from Nathaniel.
Thank you, Nathaniel.
It was worth staying up till 5 a.m. for this. Absolutely.
5 a.m.
Right on.
John he wakes up at 5 a.m.
Yeah. I don't stay up till 5 a.m. I get up at 5 a.m. Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, to everyone.
Somebody said, who is Aaron?
He's that guy over there.
Oh, hold on a second. Wait a minute. Aged urine. I guarantee you someone made an account called Aged Urine after we were talking.
Just for that?
Oh, great.
For that conversation. Right.
Here we go. Nobody made an account says I'm picking up dog feces. If this is entertainment, it's going downhill quick, isn't it?
Yeah, jeez. I think we got
to... Is there anything else about oilcloth that you wanted to cover that we didn't get to? Because we kind of moved out of there pretty quickly.
I don't know. I mean, you had the questions. Did anything pop up that reference? I would really like to... it's really interesting because there are a lot of different recipes for oilcloth in the 18th century, and they all seem to be highly poisonous or deadly. And it really, it works so well the way we can do it now. We have different kinds of things we can use for pigments and make some really interesting things. I don't know how they survived in the 18th century. I mean, they used lead for everything. I was reading the lead poisoning one that had references to multiple times to oilcloth or oilcloth-like things. And the other, the author actually called out one of the cookbooks that we've done recently. It's it's right here. The Universal Cook by John Townsend. In that recipe, in the brewing section, he talks about not having your wine go bad. And to do that, he says, you take this lead stuff and you put it in the barrel and you just kind of shake it around, and then you put your wine in there and it won't go bad. It's like, well, yeah, it's like, disinfected with lead. He references that in the book about lead poisoning. So I thought that was really interesting. That they did a lot of things and that were, very detrimental to your health as you're, building things in the 18th century because they didn't know what was bad for them. I wonder about what kinds of things we do today.
I was just
that we're going to find out.
Asbestos is a great example,
right?
Right. And then now it's like there's all kinds of new stuff coming along constantly. We haven't tested it, but we're doing lots of stuff with it. Yeah, and
we demand these products. We use them without really knowing how much damage they're doing to us in the long run. And maybe 100 years from now, they'll laugh at us. They were using XYZ plastic, and they should have known it was going to, make them all grow a third eye or whatever. Yeah.
Do we want to end on that?
That and, well, no. What do you think? Is there anything else back there?
No.
Let's talk about the Instagram contest one more time. Do you have that Instagram picture up there?
And can you talk about how to enter it?
Okay, so to be part of this Instagram thing. So every week we go through the Instagram feed. We look for something, or pictures, obviously, with the Townsend's hashtag. And that's how you enter it. That's all you have to do. We're looking for items, pictures that have to do with history, If you did, Townsend's merch or anything historical related, especially if it has to do with food, that's a great topic. So some people will do like a recipe and they'll show a picture of it or whatever. Those are great things. We just find what we think is the most interesting that week, and it becomes the winner, and Ryan DMs them and sends them a gift certificate. So if you want to be connected with that and you're on Instagram, Townsend's hashtag. And sometimes if you do the @Townsend's_official account, that helps Ryan find it. Also, this week's winner was the guy with the kitty litter oven.
Yes.
And
spun us down a trail.
Yeah, what happened there?
Yeah, so yeah, see, that got us going.
It's a cool project.
We have him to thank for aged year and account. That's that's what happened there.
So that was that, and again, special thanks to the new Patreon supporters. And thank you guys so much for that. I also want to thank everyone that I find out all these strange people are watching the live stream. It's like moms out there probably watching the live stream. Carol and Frank are many times are out there. Jim's Red Pants, they're watching the live stream.
Somebody just commented that he went to high school with you, so he's watching the live stream as well.
Okay, somebody from high school. I have no idea who that was. So always really interesting to find out who is on live stream, and people from all around the world waiting until 5 o'clock in the morning to watch the live stream. Thank you so much for all your amazing support, all your great comments and answering questions and asking questions, sharing our videos. It is so tremendous, and I really want to thank everyone. And hey, thanks for watching today.